Reboot your credit card with Apple Card. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that can earn 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account. A high-yield, low-effort way to grow your money with no fees. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone to start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners, subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
What you do every day as a writer is you have bad ideas. That is actually the living. You have bad ideas because you know that you'll get good ones. That there'll be a piece of gold in all that coal. Somebody asked me what if any skill I had, and I think it's delusion.
Welcome back to Working. I'm your host, Isaac Butler.
And I'm your other host, June Thomas.
Hey, June, whose voice did we hear extolling the virtues of bad ideas at the beginning of the episode this week?
Well, Isaac, that was Suk Pannu, who is the creator of Mrs. Sidhu Investigates, a cozy British mystery currently airing in the US on Acorn TV.
Amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about Mrs. Sidhu Investigates for people who haven't seen it yet?
So the main thing you need to know is that the titular character is an Indian auntie. That is a mild-mannered, middle-aged lady who likes to help solve problems for the people in her life. She's Miss Marple, if Miss Marple were a 60-something Sikh widow with a lovable goofball of a not-quite-grown-up son and endless reserves of empathy. She's a caterer, which turns out to be a fantastic way of getting her into a lot of different workplaces and settings. Actually, let's listen to a clip from the show to get a sense of its emotional warmth. We'll hear the great Meera Syal as Mrs. Sidhu and Gurjeet Singh as her son, Tez.
Tez, what is the biggest fear of your life?
Aliens. Not alien invasion, but literally the film Aliens will be rebooted by a second-rate director.
I think the biggest fear of anyone's life is not being seen and not being loved. Granny needs me now and I have to go.
Well, what about all the food?
And it's nearly done. You just turn the oven off in 10 minutes and turn the budgies in the fryer in 2.
I can't do all that without a recipe.
Tess, you got this. I see you and I love you.
Go!
Amazing. So do our Slate Plus members get a little bit extra under the tree this week?
Indeed they do. I asked Suk to tell me about his favourite TV mystery series, and his answer was surprisingly revealing.
Amazing. You've planted a little mystery in our heads that we need to have solved. And if you are a Slate Plus member, the solution to that mystery will be waiting for you at the end of this week's episode. If you're not already a Slate Plus member, I mean, really, what are you waiting for? You get wonderful bonus segments of shows like the one that you just heard about. You get full episodes of shows like Big Mood, Little Mood or Decoder Ring. You get full access behind the paywall at Slate, and you get to support everything that we do right here on Working. Go to slate.com/working plus to sign up today. All right, now let's listen in on June's conversation with TV writer Suk Pannu.
Suk Pannu, thank you for joining us on Working to talk about your creative process.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me on.
So I wanted to talk with you because Mrs. Sidhu Investigates, a show that you created, is coming to the States on Acorn TV in September. And I wanted to learn more about how the show came about. So first, I guess, how would you describe the show?
I would describe it as a murder mystery thriller with comedy and with heart and soul. I think it's a sort of show that gets you involved in a great plot of an exciting, thrilling ride with plots and twists and turns, but also kind of gives you a hug and makes you smile, you know. So it's good entertainment, I think. But in the midst of that, we tell a great story.
So how did you dream up the show's concept? Because my understanding is that for much of your career, you were writing sketch comedy and topical humor and that kind of, you know, set-up joke kind of stuff. Where did Mrs. Sidhu come from?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was kind of schooled in comedy, but actually the kind of core concept of this comes from my earliest days. So, I grew up, the show is set in Slough, which I know to use a Brit will mean something that resonates in some way.
Yes.
It's kind of the underdog town, it's kind of this concrete thing. But the weird and interesting thing about Slough is it's plonked down right in the middle of the most expensive real estate in the country. You've got Windsor Castle.
The Royal County of
Exactly, the Royal County of Berkshire. You've got Windsor Castle just a few miles away, so royals shacked up within almost view of the place. You've got Eton College down the road where all our prime ministers were schooled, and you've got this lush and lovely countryside. So we've got these great locations, the river, the Cheviot Hills, wonderful kind of visual stuff too. When I grew up, we were brought up by our parents, but we were also brought up by our aunties. And these aunties were amazing women, lots of love. They made lots of great food, but they also had a really strong moral core. And they also were able to wheedle all your secrets out of you. They knew what you were up to before you did after time. And I thought back in those days, I was sort of growing up and I got really into escapist fiction like Miss Marple, all these great Sherlock Holmes. I loved all that mystery stuff. I thought one day, wouldn't it be amazing if one of these aunties was going to be a great super sleuth? So, forward wind, I get to a point where I'm, writing jokes and sketches and all these things, and people start maybe asking for a little more and kind of, have you got an idea? And I had an idea for a radio sitcom, which got made, which did one whole series for a kind of a guru who solved crimes. As a kind of, almost like a golden age kind of murder mystery thing. But I parlayed it into this sitcom. So I got a kind of a little head start. Go, wow, okay, so he's written a series. That's something. What's next? What's next? So I managed to pitch this nascent idea I had about this amazing woman who could solve crimes. No dice. No, the radio wasn't interested. It's been a long journey on this one. So pitched it to telly. No, it got Mirror. Attached Mira Sial, who's our star, attached to it back then, and she's always been a great supporter and ally of the show. And again, wasn't the right time. Grittier crime was more the thing. These cycles come round. Eventually, I mention it to someone again. It sort of catches the imagination, and we get a radio show.
Yeah.
So we got it commissioned as a comedy show in the comedy slot on Radio 4 as 4 half hours for a series. And I thought, well, the thing to do here is to do one mystery across those 4 half hours, do a 2-hour story and start building the characters. And so that was the real start of it. That radio show did tremendously well. It really caught people's imaginations and got a lot of fantastic press coverage. Every national newspaper has their pick of the day or week and we got on pick of the week, which is like the radio Oscars here. I'm overplaying this hugely for your American audience.
No, not at all. Absolutely. It is absolutely. Yeah.
But I mean, pick of the week here is a Radio 4 show where it's curated by a different person each time and they pick their favorite shows of the week. And if you get on, you feel great. And so we got on with that with both series of the show. So it had a good kind of taking off ramp, I think, when we then go telly. Yeah,
it's really good radio, very funny. It's not quite the same as the TV show. I mean, like, obviously, Mrs. Sidhu is at the center of it. Mira Sayal is the, the great actress at the center of it. But there's a slight difference. And I wonder about the challenges of adapting a radio concept to TV, even with the same concept. There's not that much change. You've got the Mrs. Sidhu, you've got her son. He's maybe a little nicer in the TV show, or a little more cooperative. Her deceased relatives, the relationship with the policeman. But a lot of other things feel different, I think maybe because TV demands that you have changes.
I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think radio and TV kind of demand different things.
Yeah.
But I prefer to think about it as what each of those media kind of afford you as a writer. You know, what opportunities and what's the sort of natural language they speak. So I'd done a lot of radio, and I'd kind of developed an idea that radio is quite intimate. You know, that it's really kind of quite close to you, and a lot of people listen to radio while they're doing something else. You know, sometimes you're cooking, or maybe you've got some paperwork to do, and it's kind of your friend in the room. So there's a kind of very natural intimacy about radio, and it kind of makes you want to tell a story in a certain way. So the radio series is quite fairy tale-y. You know, we're using sound to best effect. It's more comedic, I'd say, as well. Again, it was in a comedy slot, so we were very aware that, you know, the audience, they're expecting that in that slot. So there's more sort of jokes per se. The TV, as soon as when we got this opportunity, I thought and I wanted to do a 90-minute show, which is kind of cutting back from a 2-hour story in a way. I sort of felt like, wow, I've been able to do a 2-hour story. You know, 90 minutes shouldn't be so hard, should it?
Right.
Right. But different challenges. And I think you want to be able to tell, especially in a 90-minute feature length, you know, that's a film. Yeah. You want to be able to tell cinematic stories, you know, things with that kind of pull and that kind of drama. And the other thing that I think is really interesting about both is the question of budget. I mean, radio has tiny budgets in terms of the numbers. So we had to do all sorts of things, like we had actors doubling up. You know, if you want 6 or 7 characters, you can afford maybe three actors of the week plus your regular cast. And that was an interesting challenge, because that shapes how the ages of your characters. One character playing 2 parts needs to be very different in both of them. Yeah. And then TV has much bigger budgets. But the problem is, I suppose the interesting is that in radio, in production terms, your budget's infinite. Right. You can put them on a spaceship. You can have airplanes explode.
One of the radio series is in a very fancy house with stables and you know, just follies and all kinds of things. And you can imagine this house is just the fanciest mansion, you know, the great stately home, but you don't have to pay anything. To rent one.
We had snow. You know, we were able. There's it's a part of the plot. They're snowed in, and you know, kind of. Then you start talking to TV people. Can we do that? I say, well, that would be quite hard. You know, half your budget's going to just go on that. You go, okay, we'll think again. So the telly budgets are bigger, but you have to be somewhat more realistic about it. Yeah. So it was an interesting and new challenge to go. But I mean, what's consistent across both is that the bedrock of it is an intriguing plot. You know, murder, mystery, thriller plot is, for me, the kind of ground level. We get that in place, and you can have a lot of fun, you know, with the medium you're working with. Yeah. So, yes, we pitched it to telly. We got Monumental interested, which is great, fantastic production company. And I thought, you know, what do I really want this to be? And I think the concept, as you say, is the same. It's this nosy Indian caterer, auntie, solving crimes. She's from Slough. This is really important to me, I think, also, that she's from an Asian culture. She's like me. She's straddling 2 cultures. She's from an Asian culture. She's got the wisdom, the hard knocks from that, but she's got agency outside. She can take that into the bigger world. She can be a brown savior, is, you know, kind of the shorthand. So I thought that's so important to me to be able to convey that, you know, to make sure that's still happening. So that part of the concept for me was, yes, absolutely, that must happen.
So let's talk a little bit about another thing that is required in TV, even though, as you say, in a sense, it's a smaller space. You've got 1.5 hours to tell a story rather than 2 hours. But you also have another requirement that you don't really have in radio, and that is the kind of the serial element. You know, British seasons are famously shorter than Americans one. There's 4 90-minute episodes of Mrs. Sidhu, but there are still some serial elements, you know, things that develop slowly over the course of the season, hopefully into the next one. So was that something that you naturally wanted to incorporate, or was that something that you kind of had to bolt on afterward? How did that come into things?
No, I kind of always really wanted a serial element. In fact, there was some early on, some even sort of stronger serial kind of lines to it, which kind of got pulled in. Again, there's all practical stuff in a way, the economy of telling the story, how much you want to lean on a serial element of the story and actually telling the story of the week. And of course, story of the week has to kind of come to the top. And they're quite complex stories. They're very multi-layered.
Lots of twists and turns, yes.
Yeah, but also I build them in layers. So there's a plot twist. And then because it's an amateur sleuth, you have a slightly different problem to a kind of a detective show, because detectives knock on doors, they interview people, they rugby tackle them down and get the answers. And if it's the wrong answer, they move on to the next one. A kind of a linear procession. Yeah. Whereas these are kind of, echoing, if you like, that Agatha Christie kind of idea, built around situations, sort of existing kind of networks of relationships that are then tested by a murder, and then our amateur sleuth comes in and starts being part of that world and tweaking at what's going on. So that all is kind of you needs to be built in before she kind of can get going. So it's quite a hard and time-consuming, very rewarding when it comes off. Yes. I think if all those layers come together to a good conclusion, I think you feel by the end of the episode, oh my God, I've really had my money's worth here.
Yeah. Well, and it also, as a viewer, it kind of adds a layer too. I fully understand the challenges of the serial elements. Again, the time, you want the stories to stand alone. But it also adds a layer. For example, there's, just for people who haven't seen it yet, in addition to the policeman who Mrs. Sidhu mostly works with and forms a partnership with, there's his boss, as it were, a senior policeman. And we get a sense that there's some relationship, there's some connection between this policeman and Mrs. Sidhu's father, who was also a policeman. And that, I don't believe, was present in the radio, but it's really, it's small. It's almost hardly there, but it's enough to set a seed in the viewer's brain of like, what's going on with DeVries and Mrs. Sidhu, or with her father, who obviously isn't there. He's deceased. It pays off, but I can totally see that it's a lot of extra work that you have to put in to introduce those elements. And
it's not just the work you put in. It's then you go, well, you're running to 90 minutes. If you're running to 95, what are you going to pull out of here? And I think that even in the writing, not necessarily in the editing, you're going, well, if we can do that in a more economical way, it is definitely something to toy with. I will not reveal too much,
Darn.
Yeah, but yes, there's definitely something there that we can work with for sure.
Yes. Well, okay, we definitely need season 2 now.
We'll be back with more of June's conversation with Suk Pannu after this.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you're driving, cooking, or doing laundry, Progressive knows the podcasts you listen to go best when they're bundled with another activity, much like how their Progressive home and auto policies go best when they're bundled. Having these two policies together makes taking care of your insurance easier and could help you save too. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save nearly $800 on average. That's a whole lot of savings and protection for your favorite podcast listening activities, like going on a road trip, cooking dinner, and even hitting the home gym. Yep, your home and your car are even easier to protect when you bundle your insurance together. Find your perfect combo. Get a home and car insurance quote at progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $793 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. Reboot your credit card with Apple Card. It gives you unlimited daily cash back that can earn 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a savings account. A high-yield, low-effort way to grow your money with no fees. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone to start earning and growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Hey listeners, Isaac Butler here. Just wanted to say really quickly that if you're enjoying what you're listening to right now, and you haven't done so already, why not tap that subscribe button on your podcast app? That way you will never miss an episode. And if you are enjoying what you hear and you already subscribe and you want to know what more you could do to help us, maybe leave us a nice review or rate us, however you might do that on your podcast app. Like give us 5 stars on Apple or click the little star thing on Overcast or whatever the method is of your choice. Those things actually really do help us find new listeners. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get on with the show.
So, as we've talked a little bit about Mrs. Sidhu, as we've said, played by the amazing Meera Syal, she is, as well as being a fantastic actor, she's an incredibly talented writer of screenplays, of books. She can do it all, indeed. You've worked with her for more than 20 years, starting, I think, with Goodness Gracious Me and The Kumars at Number 42. Did you create the character of Mrs. Sidhu with her in mind?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I definitely had worked with Meera and always thought, well, wouldn't it be great to do something with her? That when I first pushed it, I just sort of went, well, here's an idea. And I haven't talked to the star, but wouldn't it be great if? Uh-huh. But when I finally did talk to her, some years after that, she loved it. And that was so, well, it kind of gives you heart and confidence. You kind of go,
yes.
Yeah. There's something here. And something that she obviously thinks is playable for her as well, that she can relate to and bring, the talent she's got to it. So, yeah, from that moment on, and this is a real never give up story as well, because, having had it knocked back for a decade and more, to finally get it on radio, leave alone telly, it was kind of like, oh, talk about what do you do every day? What you do every day as a writer is you have bad ideas. That is actually the living. You have bad ideas because you know that you'll get good ones, that there'll be a piece of gold in all that coal. But this one, I always knew from the go that it was a really good, solid concept that with the right person, as Mrs. Sidhu would fly. So it was always one of those kind of, there's got to be something. This is going to fly one day. This will. So I never really, somebody asked me what if any skill I had, and I think it's delusion. I think I always had this delusion that it would, of course we'll make a radio show, we'll make a TV show too.
Meera Syal is also credited with providing some material in the 2 episodes of season 1 that you wrote. I'm just curious, again, as a super fan, what did that involve?
Well, I think it involved giving Meera some leeway with the way she wanted to inhabit her character and jokes too. She's one hell of a funny lady. So there are cracking lines that she's put in and moments that she really wanted to show and to put out there. And it's all good. It's only good, I think, to the final product. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier slow. And to me, it's the slow of this show is that there are a few things that land for Brits in a certain way. I've never been to, well, actually I have been to slow, but there's something about the word slow. You don't have to have been there, but as a Brit, you kind of, you get that resonance. But that won't be there for Americans or for people from other countries. And, Acorn does give you this international platform. So were you conscious of kind of trying to signal some of the British elements to outsiders, as it were?
Yeah, I know. I've done some press with some American journalists, and of course, the first thing I do is explain Slough. What it means, how it, as you say, hits the ear of British people. I think it just started with that John Betjeman poem and has built up from there. Come friendly bombs fall on Slough. It's had this reputation, and yet it's a great place. It's actually been re-energized. It's full of, great people, immigrants who came here to work. So in some ways, it's a real salt of the earth place.
Yeah.
And has got this kind of bad rap, really.
Yeah.
And so, as one of my strap lines was, Slough needs a hero. That it's almost conveyed in, the shots of her house, the kind of quality of vehicle she's driving. I think
it's
we
a nice
make
van. Yeah.
it is. It's all right. It works.
Yeah,
Let's face it. And but my dad had a van like that. It was sort of, again. So I think that the important thing for me was to just know that she's an underdog.
Yeah.
That she's from a place that when she goes out into this bigger kind of high stakesy, glossy world, that we know that she's kind of down there in the pecking order.
Yeah.
And that's gonna, but she's still gonna get on top of all this mystery and all these bad folks doing bad things. So I think if that's there, then I think you are working out what Slough is from context.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. This is a very multicultural show, but it is also relevant, I think, that it's a show whose title character and two of the three central characters are South Asian. And there are still very few shows that you can say that of. And in the US, of, let's say, the handful I can think of, they've either been made by Mindy Kaling or Aziz Ansari.
Yeah.
And obviously, Mira Sayal was one of the pioneers of British Asian representation, but Mrs. Sidhu is a very different character from the character Mira played in
Ummi, yeah,
Sammy and Rosie, or Goodness Gracious Me, or wrote in Baji on the Beach. Those are from decades ago. Today, Britain's Prime Minister and Home Secretary are of Asian heritage. Scotland's First Minister, I live in Scotland, Scotland's First Minister is British Asian, as is the head of the Scottish Labour Party. Are you conscious of creating a different kind of Asian character in 2023 for a different generation of British Asian viewers, or for viewers generally?
Oh, I've got goosebumps. That's I don't think of it in those terms, but if that's something we've done, then I'm very proud. If people watch it and go, oh yeah, that's, I said, earlier, I think that it was really important for me that, and I think that probably is the kind of difference as well, is that she's got agency in the bigger world. It isn't just a question of her wandering around Slough. It's her going out, and really being part of the sort of thing that a super sleuth like Miss Marple could only solve till now.
Yeah.
So definitely there's that. I think that would be a proud achievement if we've created that, go, well, you can see now that, an Asian woman can solve your problems, that,
right.
We're part of this world. And why can't we be super sleuths? Why can't, it isn't just, old biddies from the 30s and 40s. It's now. She's a very, as you say, and really a lot of that is with Mira, the character she's built on screen. It's different again, subtly from the radio character. So we're lucky in that. There's I think, again, this is sort of the slight radio transition. I mean, again, radio, you can tweak a bit around fantasy, realism level. I mean, you're dictated to a level in realism by the basic concept. This is an Indian auntie solving crimes.
Yeah.
There's a limit. There's a reality limit you're going to hit there. But we also knew that as we went into TV, we watch a lot of crime shows, and that people are very sophisticated, knowing what the police do. Would they do this? Would they do that? So we sort of teasing around some of that a bit to just get the levels right there.
Yeah.
Would these characters open up to her? Is that real, or is it? Does she need to get? So there was a lot of discussion and writing and rewriting around that in the first series to establish its own tone, its own reality, and making that consistent. And I think that consistency is the key thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because maybe it's because there were, 26, maybe even more episodes of Murder, She Wrote in every season. But like, it got to be almost a joke that like, don't go anywhere near her because, there's a murder every week. And, when there are 4 episodes, that's less of an issue. But like, to what extent were you kind of conscious of like that realism is challenged by there being, oh, she's here again on the scene of a murder, like, because you have to have that. That's necessary.
You do. It kind of, maybe it doesn't bother me enough. It bothers me less than others in the room. I kind of like, this is, I think at the end of the day, know who you're writing for.
Yeah.
And know the type of pleasure they're trying to extract. And if you're looking for this kind of murder mystery plot with an amateur sleuth, you kind of accept that someone's going to drop dead at their feet every so often.
Yeah.
Because how many marples, were written? I've never heard anyone complain.
Yeah.
But unless you're writing a parody, and this is really important, I think that of course you can make parodies of these things, because you can make a parody of Murder, She Wrote simply because it is such a successful format.
Right.
How many episodes?
Right.
But of course, it's so successful, it becomes a parody. It becomes so familiar. Everyone's, it's formulaic, it's this and that. But do try and rewind to the beginning, in my opinion, anyway. Go, well, this is a victim of its own success. Would that we got to that, I'll happily do the return interview with you.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say
10 seasons time and are you getting tired? Is it is it taking?
Yeah, once you exceed the number of episodes of Murder, She Wrote, we'll definitely do an interview for sure. Without fail.
Well, book it now for sure.
Why did you make her a chef? Or a caterer?
Because I love food. Well, I tell you what, it's sort of her backstory. I think it's because, she's sort of between generations. So women, particularly in Asian culture, are brought up with certain expectations, and that she was married. Her kind of life was maybe being, what's called a homemaker, I think euphemistically, but cooking, cleaning, looking after kids, that sort of thing. And that when her husband died, he left her with a bunch of debts, and she parlayed this experience into something positive. She rolled up her sleeves, did the immigrant thing, and said, right, I know how to cook. I can turn this into something that will give me a life raft and pay off these debts and help with my son. So I thought it was always a very positive thing that she could do that had come really from a kind of negative, if you like, in her life, in springboarding into something and because she's a very positive character, a very optimistic character in lots of ways. So this was kind of why I thought, well, yeah, catering is, and a lot of, there are a lot of great Asian female caterers out there. And now
including in Slough,
very much in Slough, but there are a lot of TV chefs, that sort of blossomed as well. I think there's a love of food in the culture, and I think with her kind of, she's kind of a self-taught intellectual in a way. So I think that she aspires to not just cooking but chefing, to making fusion foods, to adopting the French techniques for cooking, really doing it right. And that because that's the cornerstone of catering, of cooking now, is detail and method and everything we do in writing, process, all those things. And I worked in catering as a young man to pay my rent and what have you. So I've got a little experience in that world, bar work, a lot of waiting. A lot of kitchen pot scrubbing. So I always thought it was a great high pressure world in itself. Watch the bear. It's kind of it's incredible how much drama you can screw out of a simple thing like cooking, getting meals out on time.
Yeah, and for this bridge character who's generationally a bridge between different iterations of British Asian culture, but also so much of the quote unquote acceptance or integration of Asian culture in Britain was through food. That what is the most popular dish in Britain, or the most British dish? Chicken tikka masala. For better or for worse. Indian food is the most popular food in Britain, I think.
Yeah.
And
yeah, exactly. And I also think it brings another visceral element into both radio and the TV show, which is making people feel hungry.
Yeah.
You got an extra sort of weapon in the armory there, which is I do sometimes feel very hungry writing this stuff.
Yeah.
But if you can sort of just bring that along, I think it just makes also a more winning character. The idea that you can feed someone a little bit and get to know them is a bridge for her to other people as well.
Yeah. Suk Pannu, thank you so much for talking to us about your process and for introducing us to some of the aspects of Mrs. Sidhu Investigates.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, June.
When we come back, June and I will discuss radio in the United Kingdom, holding on to ideas, good and bad, and how to fake confidence until you make it.
Labour strikes, climate change, your lousy office printer. What do they all have in common? Come on, it's all about the money. Economics is everywhere and everything, fueling our lives even when we least expect it. If you're a fan of working and are curious to learn something new and exciting about economics every week, check out the Planet Money podcast from NPR. Planet Money is a different kind of world where the complex economy actually makes sense, where human stories supersede abstract theories. Listeners can learn, laugh, and be entertained. It's econ down to earth. Planet Money answers some of life's burning questions. Will AI take over our jobs? Is fancy vodka just fancy marketing? And why are Christmas trees so darn expensive? The Planet Money team lives to tell a good story in around 30 minutes. Tune in to Planet Money every week for entertaining stories and insights about how money shapes our world. Stories that can't be found anywhere else. Listen now to Planet Money from NPR, wherever you get your podcasts. Think of your favorite entrepreneur. They wouldn't be anywhere without trusted partners. So if your commerce platform isn't converting potential customers into lifelong fans, try Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling satin sheets from Shopify's in-person POS system or offering organic olive oil on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you're covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/working, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/working to take your business to the next level. Shopify.com/working.
June, I know we've mentioned this a couple times, but can you talk a bit about the importance of scripted radio in the UK? Because that is a part of the cultural ecosystem there that is vitally important, and we don't really have it.
Yeah, totally. It is hugely important in all kinds of ways. I mean, for British actors, it's the UK equivalent of Law and Order in that it gets its own section of the British equivalent of the playbill. And of course, it's a source of income for actors. But it is especially important for writers. Just to take one example, and it is the main example, but on BBC Radio 4, every weekday, there is a 15-minute episode of The Archers, which is a radio soap opera that's been on the air for 72 years.
72 years?
That's all it is. Yes, 72
Wow.
years. A 75-minute original play in the Drama on 4 slot, then usually a half-hour serialized play just before the midnight news. But that's not all, because, as was the case with Mrs. Sidhu, a lot of the shows that are programmed in the comedy slots on the daily lineup are actually radio dramas. So it's a lot of content. And radio has traditionally been a place where writers have broken in. And the BBC provides a bunch of materials and help documents that can aid people learn how to write a radio play. We'll link to some of that stuff on our show page. And every high-end British newspaper and magazine also has a radio critic. So it's even a potential specialization for would-be critics.
Amazing. I really love how old the idea for Mrs. Sidhu Investigates is. Yeah. You know, it comes from, I mean, it almost sounded like when he was a teenager, he's like, what if my auntie were a master detective? And then he holds on to it and holds on to it and holds on to it. And eventually, you know, he needs an idea for a radio show and he kind of digs that one up and then it becomes a TV show. That's amazing. And maybe it's because I first had the idea for the method and just jotted down the method, a history in a notebook like a decade before I proposed it. But it's worth noting that if you have an idea floating around, hold on to it. Don't judge it and throw it out. Don't forget about it because you don't have time to work on it just then. You know, let it marinate. Something will come of it. Just because an idea is old to you doesn't mean that it's not going to be the right thing when the right moment comes along.
Oh, absolutely. Hold on to it. Keep returning to it. Noodle it at the back of your mind. Actively engage with it. We're all juggling a million tasks and projects all the time. But don't let those daily exigencies smother those long gestating ideas and notions that get totally lodged in your brain. As Mrs. Sidhu might put it, not all dishes need the same amount of time in the oven. Personally, I'm not a baker, but the bake-off's back, so obviously that's in my mind. I also want to mention that Suk Pannu is also turning Mrs. Sidhu Investigates into a mystery novel. Later this month, Mrs. Sidhu's Dead and Scone will be published in the UK. So listeners, nurture those ideas and one day they might become a multi-platform synergistic juggernaut.
Amazing. And your accent also reveals the pun in the title, whereas mine would not. You just be like, dead and scone. What the heck is that? I really enjoyed him articulating his approach to genre, where he doesn't see it as this limiting checklist you have to go through, but instead as a sort of, there's a capaciousness to it, right? Like as long as you hit those beats in a reasonably satisfying way, that the person coming to a cozy mystery or a space opera or whatever it is, you can actually do all of this other stuff. I'm reminded of, you know, one of the mystery authors I love is Philip Kerr, who did this Berlin noir trilogy, which traces the decline of Berlin as the Nazis take over after the end of the Weimar Republic, but through a kind of Philip Marlowe-esque, you know, jaded private eye who looks for missing persons, or Walter Mosley, who's maybe the greatest author of The Great Migration in Black experience, but he does it through the Easy Rollins murder mysteries. I'm just wondering how you feel about all this.
Yeah, I love it. I also want to shout out another kind of mystery writer. I'm now, I think, 5 of 7 into Adrian McKinty's Sean Duffy mysteries, and they are set in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And I would have been interested, I think, if they were just a basic mystery set in the Troubles, but he finds a way to comment in a really interesting way on the historical events of those times. I just learned something about Oliver North by reading one of his books. I to get back to Suk Pannu, that idea came up in lots of ways in the interview. And what really struck me was the importance of knowing who you're writing for and what they're expecting. You know, never go into something thinking, oh, this isn't a gritty, realistic cop drama, which is like, those are good. This is just a silly old lady caterer solving crimes fantasy kind of thing. No, you have to respect the genre and what your potential viewers are seeking from it. And obviously, you know, it's good to play with the conventions of the genre. This isn't a hall pass for inventiveness, but there are some guardrails. If you're doing cozy, you can't ignore feelings. If you're writing mysteries, the resolution and the explanation have to make sense. As a creator, you have to respect your audience and the history and traditions that they bring with them when they sit down to read or watch your work. But Isaac, before you ask your next question, I must note that it was really hard for me to call Mira Sayal an old lady because A, she looks amazing. She is amazing. But B, she and I are exactly the same age. So again, doubly hard. But that's part of the genre, which requires the amateur investigator to be condescended to and underestimated by everyone around her. You know, that's an important element that you need to be conscious of. No matter how much you think, oh, that person is amazing, you have to be aware that others may not appreciate their talents, and you kind of have to write from what the viewers are expecting.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I will say that I don't think of you as an old lady. And I think that you look amazing. I just want to put that out there.
Thank you.
I loved his thing about the superpower of delusion, right?
Yes.
I'm reminded of this thing that happened when I was in graduate school. Dennis Johnson, the great now late Dennis Johnson, who among other things wrote Jesus' Son, came for a campus visit, and we were all having lunch, all the grad students, and someone asked him some version of, what gets you to sit down at the computer and write in the morning? And he said with a bit of a chuckle, well, I have to start every book thinking it's going to win the Pulitzer and the National Book Award, and I'm going to get a Nobel for it. I have to imagine it's going to be huge, or else I'm not going to write it. I have to just trick myself into doing that. And I loved the honesty of that. I mean, he had a sense of humor about it, but he was telling the truth. And I think what both he and Mr. Pannu were talking about is that confidence in your work is a choice that you can make. And even if you don't feel like it, you can kind of fake it a little bit until you feel like it. I know that you are deep into the production process and the copy editing phase of your book, which was, for me anyway, actually the most emotionally grueling, difficult time of the writing process. And so I'm wondering, as you sit down to argue over semicolons with your copy editor, are you saying, yeah, Pulitzer time for June?
It's very hard for me to say this, but yes. I mean, there are so many ways of putting this that can sound completely deluded or arrogant or monumentally unrealistic. But I do think that you have to establish what your wildest ambitions are for any project that you undertake. I mean, Isaac, I hope you know that I realize that there is just an outside possibility that my book will not run the table and win every single award in existence and might not sell 1 million copies. But also, some part of you has to believe that it could. Right. You need to know where you would like your rocket ship of a project to land. I mean, is the thing you're writing a throwaway news story with a maximum lifetime of 2 hours? Is it a book that people are going to be referring to for decades into the future? The answer to that question shapes the scope and how much effort you put in and the sacrifices you make for it. So yeah, if you want to make something great, I think you do have to believe that you can make something great.
Well, June, I look forward to your scrupulously researched, archival dive, journalistically rendered story of lesbian cultural life in the 20th century. Will win, among other things, the Pulitzer Prize for poetry, the Booker Prize for international fiction. I mean, I just think you should just win everything, including categories that are a Tony Award for Best New Musical. I think you should get them all.
Awesome. Well, thank you in my acceptance speech for at least 15 of them.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's show. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please remember to subscribe, and that way you will never miss an episode. Another thing you should just do already, if you haven't, is subscribe to Slate Plus. You'll get ad-free episodes of our podcasts, full access behind the paywall on the Mothership site. You'll get bonus episodes, bonus segments of episodes, all sorts of goodies, and you get to support what we do right here on Working. Go to slate.com/workingplus to sign up today.
Many thanks to our special guest this week, Suk Pannu, and to our producer, Cameron Drews, who would make an amazing amateur detective. Tune in next week for Isaac's conversation with the great actor, Patrick Page. Until then, get back to work.
It's time to get your checking account to zero with free checking from PenFed. That's zero ATM fees, zero balance requirements, and zero time spent waiting for your paycheck to direct deposit because you can receive it up to 2 days early. Open your account with just $25 and see how big zero can be. Apply online today at penfed.org/free checking. Early direct deposit eligibility may vary between pay periods and timing of payer's funding. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Heidecker. You know me, Tim and Eric, Bridesmaids, and Fantastic Four. I'd like to personally invite you to listen to Office Hours Live with me and my co-hosts DJ Doug Pound.
Hello.
And Vic Berger.
Howdy.
Every week we bring you laughs, fun, games, and lots of other surprises. It's live. We take your Zoom calls.
Music.
We love having fun. Excuse me?
Songs. Vic said something. Music.
Songs.
Music.
I like having fun. I like to laugh. I like to meet people who can make me laugh. Please subscribe now.